responsibilities. Do we have that here? Should be. Shouldn't there be a red line item that says liaison to lab? Right? Because it's identified in the JPA. Liaison to lab. And each of you has a designated one, yeah?
There's one thing also about the lab in here that's not up there.
Okay.
That they are to report annually to the commission on their activities. And it's not something that we really see so much.
And right, and actually for clarification, according to the JPA, I don't see that it's the commission is to be the liaison. The commission isn't to be the liaison to the lab. The lab person is supposed to be the liaison back.
So the lab there, can you read out loud?
Lab liaisons, each lab may appoint one lab member to act as the liaison to the commission, who shall present an annual report of the activities of the lab to the library commission. And so we don't force that, because it's just may. But it does not state that the commissioners are liaison to the lab.
Okay, so I'm gonna cross this off here, and that it's here, lab liaison.
And it also says in relation to the lab that all labs are encouraged to hold one combined meeting at least once a year to
Right.
discuss system-wide lab research and encourage.
And it kind of sounds like they're supposed to do it on their own instead of having.
It's silent on how that happens.
Yeah. Silence is definitely.
So, and I've been to one of those since I've been a commissioner, and that was the one that was over on East Santa Rosa at that library there. We were all there, and that was around Measure M, and then there was a lot of people that had questions about the roles of the commissions and.
Right.
Right. And did all the stuff and then nothing happened.
Well, it's not uncommon.
Okay, if your responsibilities are in red, and the lab's responsibilities are in blue, right, the things that we've identified from the JPA agreement in blue, what is your role with respect to the labs? Okay? Yes.
One of my roles with my lab is to have recommendations to their agenda.
Right, so you're giving them stuff that you want them to talk about because you need input.
Right.
And then also we report to the lab about commission business.
Okay? So that's something that, do all of you do that? Is that a yes? Or to lab, RA, commission business. Okay? What other role might you have?
Well, I don't know if there was a role or responsibility, we appoint lab members.
Right. So your responsibility is to appoint. I think your role is to potentially strategize and recruit.
Right.
Do you guys know what I mean by that? I'm trying to get a yes or a no or
I'm not sure.
Not sure?
I mean,
Okay.
to me, is that my responsibility as a commissioner, or is that the lab's responsibility?
To
Recruit.
I think we could have a role in doing that. It's, the lab members come in lots of different ways, and I think this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is how do we shape the branches and get good people to come in.
So, yeah, I think that this is, again, you're gonna do it from your position as a commissioner, right? Because the strategizing and recruiting is helping the lab themselves create the strongest lab possible in that community, right? So you're assisting them, you're not directing them, you're not doing this alone. You're potentially facilitating this strategizing and recruiting around how to make the strongest library advisory board possible. Again, I think it's a
working with the branch managers to do that. At
Right.
least that's what I see.
So that's, well, I mean, I think it's working with your existing lab and the branch manager, right?
And I think labs are at different stages here. I feel like our lab could use some very specific direction on not abstractions of outreach or communicating, but some very concrete ideas of what's needed, and it would clarify what the role is so that incoming members would have a very clear idea We have some people on the lab who expressed openly that they don't know why they're there. They come, they approve the minutes, they read the agenda, they listen to a report, they go home.
That's exactly what I said when I joined the lab 3 or 4 years ago.
So,
This is the problem
And
I
I've
wanted to
gotten
address
that
today.
from my lab as well.
and I feel their pain, but I'm not quite sure what the concrete suggestions are.
They can't even figure out how to spend $500.
Okay, so we're just gonna flip this around as necessary, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. And then, so here, what I'd like to see happen is us think about the idea of creating I don't know what it is, whether it's just a handout or something that you can take to the labs and say, this is what we understand about the labs from the JPA agreement. This is, we hope, how the relationship between the commission and the labs can move forward, right?
There is a document that was created by the Sebastopol lab that is a, what was it called?
A bit of that,
They have the handbook for lab membership or?
yeah, and I thought that went system-wide.
Okay, but, so there is an extant document that
Okay,
begins this.
so creating or finding, right?
Right,
So
and I
maybe,
think if we're making action items
Yeah.
here, what I just heard, and we hear a lot,
uh-huh,
I think there's a spectrum of responses from the different labs about how effective they are or what their roles are.
right,
And I think a role or something that is maybe even a responsibility or direction for us as a commission is to begin to figure out how to take that information, listen to the frustration, figure out how different labs feel they function, and figure out how to create a sense of what labs can do or should do. Yeah, can you understand what I'm saying? In other words,
right, so restate that concisely.
okay, good luck. That today we have our voices and our
Yes.
perspective.
Yes,
I think as Peter said, and as we, there's a spectrum of, and I think if I ask my lab how they feel their responsibilities are, they'll say, we're happy, it's fine, we're doing well.
right,
Don't bug us, we know what we're doing, we're happy. If you were to talk to some of the other labs,
Yeah.
they'd say, what do we do? Why are we here?
right.
And so somebody needs to collect the lab's input and then have some sort of committee or some
So
sort of.
what I'm suggesting is that the handbook is about, this is clarity from the JPA agreement,
Okay,
okay? And then the conversation is, how do we support each other?
the
Right? How does the
conversation is,
commission and the lab support each other?
and I think the first conversation is, what's your frustration?
Okay,
What's the status?
you could start there.
What's your status? Well,
Right.
what's the status of things? Yeah.
Right, so I think that this leads to, that the concept of, this, I wanted you to have some clarity in terms of something which says, this is your role. This is how it's defined in the JPA agreement, right? And then your role, your responsibility, right? This is your responsibility over there in the blue. And then there is, being able to facilitate a convo around the role. Because the role isn't necessarily the responsibility, the role can be more than the responsibility, right? Or it's the way to get to achieving the responsibilities. So facilitate a conversation on the role and the relationship. Because the relationship may be more than what exists in the JPA agreement, which right now, that relationship, the only way it's defined is that you're going to actually appoint them, right? Where is it on? Is it not on here?
Oh, it's over in the blue.
Appointed by the
Right there.
commission, right, so that is over here as an item, right, appointed by commission. So, you're going to appoint the labs, and then the inherent responsibility, I'm I'm sorry, the role, these are responsibilities, the role over there is to somehow liaise with them. And they're supposed to report to you. You could potentially make it easy for them by showing up at their meetings.
Well,
And I think that's what many of you do,
Right,
right?
and although it's not in the JPA, that has been, the expectation is that commissioners will attend the lab meetings. So there-
Expectation generated by whom, you know?
It's, kind of.
Past practice.
Past practice.
Past practice.
That way for years and years and years.
Okay.
And I don't know if the old JPA said that, and now I have a copy, I can look it up, but,
Okay,
so that's a past practice, and that's what they expect. I mean,
Right.
if commissioners stop showing up at the
Right,
lab meetings,
right,
really,
right.
what is the point?
exactly, exactly. So the role is to actually not only report to the labs, but also it's double. These two things here are about being there, right? Being present.
And taking information back.
Exactly. So you're going to take information and share, right?
Right.
So these three ideas together.
And I think it's also got to do with us as commissioners taking the responsibility of involving our labs. That, you know, this is my feeling, but that I feel like many of the labs are floundering about what do we do. And I feel that it's the commissioner's responsibility, since there are basically our committees to some degree, to think about what do I want from my lab, and to give direction, and to receive direction, not to dictate direction, but to engage. I like that verb.
So the reason I'm going there is because I really want to differentiate roles. So engaging the labs is something above and beyond just appointing them
Right.
and getting reports from them. You're not even, I think, in the JPA agreement, designated to report to them,
The other way
right?
around.
It's the other way around, right?
Right.
So you're already over here, you are reporting to them by sharing information, right? And you're also potentially,
Hearing,
absolutely, you're listening.
listening.
Right, and then you're also sharing information about what they could be discussing that would be helpful to the whole system in terms of their input, right? So you're giving them agenda items, you're sharing information, you're receiving information from them, and then ideally, you're taking some action associated with that at a system level, or even with a specific one.
There's a specific example, and it's rare, but 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a big policy debate about the internet and filtering the internet.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's not gone away, but it's,
Yes.
but when I was a member of the lab then,
Uh-huh,
and the commission came to us through the commissioner, asking for our input on that policy,
right.
so that there was broad community involvement in the making of that policy. That's one of the most specific examples I had where a lab role was important.
Right. So you know, essentially, it's you're engaging labs because you're seeking input.
Lab members were strongly encouraged to go to the strategic plan meetings.
Yeah.
They were all
Yeah.
invited,
Yeah. And a lot of them did
and
go.
a lot of them
Yeah.
did
They
go.
were not at convenient locations.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So I really do think that there is,
There are barriers to participation as small as the lab members are elderly and we have the meetings late at night and it's not close by.
Ours are going to be.
Yeah.
The other issue I think is maybe because of my years of service, and this is a role to some degree, but I think our potential commission members are people who are either on labs or in Friends.
Yeah.
And that to some degree, a role that we're having as a commissioner is to nurture our future leaders.
I believe so, that's what the whole strategize and recruit.
Right,
You
okay.
know, it's not just for the labs, but it's also for the commission.
Right, well, and for the leadership of the library in the future.
Although not every commissioner comes from that place, like I didn't, I was not.
No, I know, you can't.
Member of the lab or the.
Right.
Reese, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Linda, so, I mean, that is certainly fertile ground
Right.
for.
Cool. Thanks.
Yes,
I'm sorry, the advocacy piece, I like your example very much of that. So here's a system-wide issue, and that we can engage our labs with and seek their feedback, which they're supposed to be giving us, provide us with information on X. And I think it's part of our responsibility is to provide them with the same X, the same issue, so that we as a commission go to all of our lab meetings and say, this is an issue that we want input on. And it's the same issue. It might be something like an election. It might be something else, but so that,
Ours were one that we also came up.
Yeah.
so that we
Right.
are speaking,
And, Ryan's and
we're seeking the same information
right.
from a variety of lab sources, but we need to determine what some of those
Right.
issues are that we're asking to engage.
And essentially, you need speaking points about those issues so that you're all messaging the same thing.
Yes, and I
You're all
think
framing
that's
And that's
great,
the
that,
advocacy piece.
that is great. One of the barriers to that, though, is that the labs need to have different
Understood.
rates of meetings.
Understood.
So if
Understood.
somebody
So-
only meets quarterly, it's hard to
Right.
get
So-
to them.
So there's,
In time and fashion.
you know, I think that one of your roles is really to help kind of create, to bridge the gap, if you will, okay? Bridge the opportunity gap associated with highly functioning commission plus labs. Because right now, I mean, there's so many things that get in the way of, and you just listed them. When they meet, you know, who's involved, you know, how often they meet, when in the day or day of week they meet, all of those things in terms of, you could almost create a series of, so in facilitating conversation with the LABs about not just the relationship, but how we can close the opportunity gap so that there is success associated with everybody being able to fulfill both their responsibilities and their roles. Because essentially, like you just said, it's not just about the responsibility of carrying out the governmental agency responsibility of being on one of these two governmental bodies, but all of you also carry the advocacy role for the library. So it seems like you could find, very clearly define what's different about you, as defined in the JPA, right? It could be a one-page thing. This is the responsibility of the commission, and then of the LAB, and these are the things that these are the ways that we can work together to best support the library's, you know, outcomes, best outcomes, right? So it would be the things that you're talking about in terms of liaising, and it would be in terms of potentially changing their practices so that there is more engagement, there's more ability for more people to be part of that, and widens the pool. And also you could help facilitate those labs understanding that they should be recruiting themselves for the people they want on their boards. Just like you should be recruiting yourselves for the people that you want on your board.
And if I can step in here with my number 7 chair hat.
Means nothing.
It means nothing. But I'm wondering about, I like to put the wheels on the bus and not just think. And so for me, this idea of that David just brought up of that engaging the labs in issues and discussions is I don't want to be the only person who's responsible for earmarking those things. And what I'm hearing is that we need lead time. So for example, the election is a good example. We have lead time on that. But I would love it if all the members of the commission, as we confront policy issues, think, this is one that we really need to check with the labs about.
Right.
Please, you know, to get that there so that it doesn't fall off the plate.
Right, so actually, you know, I think another thing here is that you should actually, I don't know if this exists to some degree, it probably does, and maybe it's more driven by admin at the library. But you should generate an annual calendar. You have one?
Got one right here.
So I talking about for the commission.
Right.
And you already know when your meetings are gonna be on an annual basis. You already know that what happens regularly on an annual basis,